that real estate agents here are allowed to represent both sides. And in fact, notary publics are allowed to represent both sides in a transaction. As an English lawyer, I see a very big red flag there as a very clear conflict of interest.
This is a series from Guruguay on the legal aspects you need to know about living in Uruguay. I'll be talking to experts who spend their professional lives advising foreigners specifically about locating to Uruguay. Who can buy property in Uruguay? What are the costs? And what does the buying process look like? I talked to Mark Teuten, who leads Teuten Associates, a team providing a range of legal and notarial services. He's originally from the UK and is the only lawyer in Uruguay to have qualified for the bar in both the UK and Uruguay. He's accompanied many foreigners in real estate buying processes, and I'm here to pick his brain on your behalf. So, Mark, let's get started. Who can buy property in Uruguay?
To answer your question, who can buy property in Uruguay? Anybody. There's no restrictions in Uruguay on who can buy properties.
Most Uruguay readers are going to be totally new to the country. So it'd be really helpful if you could take me step by step through the buyer's process.
Okay, I'll try to do that as briefly as I can. The first thing, not so much a legal thing, but I do make all my clients aware that buying property in the first instance is a negotiation, and that you need to be aware that the price that's listed is probably not the price that the person's really looking for. So there's an element of bartering involved. Happy to go into that a bit more if clients have questions, but they should be aware of that. That's just general advice, not legal advice. In terms of legally, the way the process works is once you've agreed a price with the seller, the first stage is to sign what is called in Spanish a boleto de reserva, which in English is a reservation contract. And that you sign normally very shortly after you've agreed the price, within a week or two. And at that time, you have to put down 10% of the purchase price. And in that contract, it establishes a period of time for which the transaction is to close, which tends to be between 30 to 60 days. And then between signing the reservation contract and closing is when the notary public in Uruguay, because all real estate transactions in Uruguay are done through a notary, they do the title search and also check that taxes are up to date and all that kind of thing. And then assuming everything's in good order, then you proceed to closing. As I say, normally within 30, 60 days. Closing is done. You sign what in Spanish is called an escritura de compraventa, which is a sale and purchase deed. It's all pretty formal, done with a notary, and then you will have to pay the balance of the purchase price and any other associated fees and expenses.
So tell us, what are the transaction costs involved?
Yeah, transaction costs in Uruguay are higher than what a lot of people are used to. But again, it's a case of when in Rome, do as the Romans. In general, we tell clients expect transaction costs on a purchase to be around 8% of the purchase price. That figure is made up of 3% plus VAT to the real estate agent, if there is a real estate agent involved, which there generally is, but not necessarily. 3% plus VAT to the notary who acts on the transaction. And then the remaining 1.75% is made up of taxes, search fees, things like that. But bottom line, about 8% on a purchase, and on a sale it'll be about 6%.
Okay, great. Talking about taxes for a householder, can you give us an idea of the annual taxes that are applicable, the idea of costs?
I can in general terms, but they vary a fair bit according to where in the country you're buying and what you're buying. But the annual taxes that you will have to pay are the contribución inmobiliaria, which is basically local council tax. In England, we call them rates. Again, highly variable according to the value of the property. But how can I estimate it? Because it's very much based on the value of the property. I don't think in any case there is significant proportion of the value. Sometimes, like I think in the old city where you live, Karen, as well, because the taxes are not based on the market value, they're based on the rateable value of the property. I think they're probably the contribution is not very much. There's some flats and new apartments in Pocitos where they can be more, and new properties in Punta del Este and stuff, perhaps they are more significant. They are quite variable, but it's not like that they're 5% or 10% of the property value per year or anything like that. It's much, much more 1% or 0.5% or something, or a few $100s or a couple of $1,000s a year in very general terms. And then the second thing is there's a primary education tax, which again is even less. That tends to be a very nominal amount for which you don't even get a bill and you have to log on and pay it every year, but it tends to be a very small amount and it's supposed to fund primary education. And there's another one which is called Impuestos Domiciliarios, which is again a local council tax, sometimes called door taxes, which is again even less, it's like primary education tax or even less, a few hundred pesos a month. At the moment, the peso is at around 38 to 40 pesos per dollar. So you're probably talking $10 to $20 a month for that. So not substantial amounts.
So as most Guruguay readers don't speak Spanish, and you've already mentioned a few things that people should be aware of and be asking about at the time that they're considering a property, any other tips that you'd have?
Well, again, this sounds subjective. My opinion as a lawyer here is that the buyers need to make sure that they've got independent legal advice. It sounds self-serving, but it's not. I'm not saying it just for me. I'm saying it to everybody. Make sure that you get an independent legal advice. For most people, you're talking about a major financial transaction in a foreign country. So make sure you get independent legal advice. A number of real estate agents will try to offer you the services of their friendly local notary, possibly even at a reduced price. My suggestion would be to avoid those offers.
My understanding is that in Europe, for example, it would be illegal in some countries for a real estate agent to represent both buyer and seller. But here in Uruguay, that's pretty much the norm.
Yes, that's a slightly different point as well. I mean, and you can't avoid that real estate agents here are allowed to represent both sides. And in fact, notary publics are allowed to represent both sides in a transaction. You can't avoid the real estate agent acting for both parties. I mean, you can, because you can appoint your own real estate agent and say, I want you to help me find a property. But a lot of real estate agents are getting commission from both sides. 3% can be a very lucrative business. The downside of that is whose interests are they really protecting? So I think be slightly wary. And yeah, you can appoint your own real estate agent and hopefully they will better protect specifically your interests and not those of the seller. Yeah. And on the notary side, I think likewise that a notary can't say that they're independent, that they should be working for one side or the other. As an English lawyer, I see a very big red flag there as a very clear conflict of interest. In general terms, I would say to foreigners who are looking at Uruguay that the purchase of property here is very well regulated. It's all what in legal terms we call registered land. So you get a property registration number, and that will be registered with a central register, and which you can consult to confirm.
There are illegal settlements, aren't there, along the coast? In Rocha, in Canelones. Do you want to add something about that?
Yeah. So, particularly along the coast, and more so when you closer up to the border with Brazil, there are some illegal settlements and people who have occupied land and built on it. And most of the constructions, some are better than others, but that's not what most foreign clients are looking to buy, and they're generally looking at the regulated real estate market. So there is, I think, in that sort of, let's say, hippie market, because it tends to be mainly the sort of hippie community who, who've occupied vacant land down there, and they live something, and they live happily down there. And I imagine, and then there is a market, I suppose they sell it to their friends for whatever, but they've got no proper title to the land, and in principle can be evicted pretty much at any stage, unless they've been there over 30 years, which is the prescription period in Uruguay in order to be able to claim that the land is your own. I have acted for clients who have acquired title through prescription, but in that case, again, you've gone from unregulated into regulated, because by showing that you've acquired it through prescription, which involves a court process, you will then get a legal title.
So if you're thinking about relocating to Uruguay, make sure you check out our website, guruguay.com, and hit the Live button. Part of our work involves finding trusted service providers who love working with foreigners and demonstrate consistent quality. Providers like the ones you're listening to now. You'll find them listed in the Live section, as well as hundreds of articles about Uruguay, South America's most charming and most stable nation. And make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/guruguay, to never miss a new video.